Hello and welcome. This is rooflemonger, my friends. We had some really interesting news drop here at the Tokyo Game Show. You might know that SNK is a little bit in the business of what we call shadow drops, sort of surprise announcements. And we got a really fun surprise announcement in that real Bout 2, one of the entrants in the famed Fatal Fury series, is now getting basically a full-on remaster collection. Oh, and by the way, it's out right now. Only on Steam for the moment, though. Console, hopefully soon. And it's being done by Code Mystics. That means you got quality online play, and Code Mystics has done a lot of great remasters of classic SNK titles. And in big shout out to SNK, they let me play the build just a little bit early before it got announced. So before we talk about the game, though, how it was announced was actually very, very interesting. So I mentioned how it was announced at Tokyo Game Show. Sure, it was. But where at Tokyo Game Show? Well, it was on Capcom's live stage. So Oda-san, head honcho over at SNK, was with Takayuki Nakayama and Shuhei Matsumoto, who are basically in charge of Street Fighter 6 currently, and this was right after a little bit of a showcase of Sea Viper. If you recall, a while back on the channel, I made a video saying Capcom vs SNK 3, or SVC Chaos 2, is somewhat inevitable. Well, this is further proof that the love-in of Capcom and SNK isn't going anywhere anytime just yet. Because hijacking Capcom's main stage, like right before they go on to talk about Resident Evil, is kind of a big deal. That's a good get. That's some clout on display, if you will. And also, on top of this, with Real Bout 2 getting, the full-on modern-day treatment, there's more to come, it would look like. They announced the Neo Geo Premium Collection. Basically a new initiative they got going on that, we're going to take a bunch of old classic Neo Geo games and we're going to remaster them with a modern flair. And to be honest, they've been doing that for the last few years fairly regularly, so it's good, but it's not just going to be only fighting games. It's going to be all SNK games. So modern day remaster of Akari Warriors? Hey, just maybe. So look forward to that, I guess. And that said here, we have Real Bout 2. Let's talk about Real Bout 2. So what exactly is Real Bout 2 anyways? Well, it's one of the mainline Fatal Fury games. It's the last classic Fatal Fury before we got to Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves, which sort of changed up the whole formula. As you can see, aesthetically, it's a very beautiful looking game, absolute stunner of 2D fighting games. And other unique things, it was the last classical Fatal Fury game to have the lane-based system, where you can be in or out of the fight. Mark of the Wolves and the more recent City of the Wolves did away with that. So it's very much a classical Fatal Fury game. And this game's been somewhat difficult to play, other than emulation. It's been on some very old collections, which I don't even know are for sale anymore. So having it here in a more modern presentation with all the fixings is very, very welcome. Just lots of things you would appreciate in a collection, right? Hey, here's all the classical art, very easily accessible. I know you want to get that ching in there, so don't worry. You can just admire all that is man. And one of the best things about this collection here, this modern day remaster, is we have a modern day training mode added to the game. Back in the day, if we even got a home release for the games to begin with, we didn't really get much of a way of a training mode if we ever got one at all. And now we got a pretty solid one. Some basic things like, easy access to move lists, which in older games is a bigger deal than you'd think. Able to set all sorts of values, and also being able to see inputs and hitboxes. And I always love being able to see hitboxes in older games, because, back in the day, you might have heard the term priority. We just had magic terms because we thought how things interacted with each other, because we didn't know the hitboxes on everything, right? In modern games, seeing hitboxes is whatever. You'd expect that either in-game or checking a various wiki or whatever. In older games, it's always a forbidden little treat, like you're seeing how the sausage is made. This is also the game that introduced Rick Stroud and Shang Fei to the franchise and to SNK in general. Rick in particular, cool guy, he's a Native American boxer. And he's got those lightning quick hands you'd expect out of a 2D fighting game boxer. Also, you may notice the other character, that was Alfred. So Alfred is not normally selectable. He's a hidden character. And in this version, they literally just made selecting him a button press. He has his own dedicated button press if you want to get Alfred. Normally in older revisions of the game, there's a whole process in unlocking him. Then to be able to use him here, you just press a button, you got him, you're good to go. As far as the online play goes, unfortunately in the early build I didn't have access to playing online, but as Code Mystics, they have traditionally done very well with retrofitting the older games with online play in a very workable and playable way. It's, refreshing to say in the modern day, because, back in the day we couldn't, but I'm honestly not too worried about it. I'm sure it'll work fine online. Have to get your hands on it for yourself, I suppose, but yeah, so that part I couldn't check out, but overall, the entire package seems really good. It's a classic, beloved game. If you want your Duck King fix, this is the game for it. Retrofit it with pretty much all the stuff you would want with a classic release. And once again, SNK's been very good about releasing the old school games over the last few years. So yeah, basically a big thumbs up from me, especially because with this whole Neo Geo Classics program, I guess we're going to see even more. And yes, there is some lovely Shinkiro art to go along with it. In recent times, dude's been getting his paychecks from Capcom and SNK. Now, to mention, for fans of, classic fighting games, especially the fighting game lore, as Fatal Fury is a very long-running series as far as, story stuff goes, this is not a canonical entry into the game, in that there's not really any story. The main storyline before Mark of the Wolves wraps up in the original Real Bout. That's the one where Geese finally falls to his death for real this time. This one is more of a dream match. We have Rick and Shang Fei, that's cool, but they don't have much to do with the actual Fatal Fury plot. Like in this game, Geese and Krauser are both selectable and they're both dead. So as far as story stuff go, plot kind of leaves off at Real Bout 1 and then picks up again in Mark of the Wolves and then City of the Wolves much later on. Though that said, the reason this is getting the collection and the remaster is because it's one of the best playing fighting games ever made, especially for, just classical 2D fighters. I just bring it up because SK is always a bit better on lore and story if you want to see the older games. So that said, cool collection. Very happy they announced it. As just a fan of fighting games in general, and we cover fighting game news here, I'm a really big fan of the whole SNK Shadow Drop system, where they're just like, oh, by the way, here's a classic re-release, and oh, it's out right now. When SNK's around, you always got to stay frosty. And now they're committing to this whole Neo Geo Classics initiative. Are we going to have a surprise release eventually of Bariki 1? Probably not. That'd be kind of crazy, right? Classics imply classic. Real Bout 2 is a classic. One of the best 2D fighting games ever made. Bariki 1 is one of the games ever made. Interesting for what it is, but I'd probably put a few games ahead of it in line if I was re-releasing old classics. But that said, I figure I'd give a news update because I think it's a very interesting piece of news. And that all said, well, that is it for the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well. And go out and play some fighting games.
This is the love making.